Now, guys, that we're done with round 14, we'll now be moving into round 15 with our weekly tips. And, of course, this will be the last week of the buys. So after this, we'll hit round 16, the last 8 rounds, because we have 24 rounds this year. And we'll be hitting the final straps towards the end of the season. But we do have some massive games in round 15. And we'll start with the first one down at GMHBA Stadium, Geelong versus Melbourne. This is massive for Geelong. If they don't pull this win, they are definitely... they could almost miss the finals from this. They do have a couple more games down at GMHBA Stadium against some pretty easy opponents, so they don't exactly have to win this game, but they're going to be in real trouble if they don't. I am going to be tipping Melbourne in this one because I think they're in better form, and Melbourne have proven that they can go down into Geelong and win down there. I do give Geelong a bit of a chance, though, because they do come off the bye as not the best sometimes, so I'm not exactly saying that they're off right now. But I think Melbourne match up pretty well with Geelong. So I'm going to be giving Melbourne this one. After that, Friday night, we have St Kilda versus Brisbane. This is basically a 50-50 in my opinion. St Kilda at Marvel are a lot better. But Brisbane not at the MCG will definitely be happy about that. If this was at the MCG, I'd be giving it to St Kilda. And if this is at the Gabba, I'd be kicking Brisbane. But at Marvel, it's 50-50 at this stage. The only reason why I'm going to go with Brisbane is because they're higher on the ladder. That's the only reason. And plus, I think that St Kilda's defence is a little bit shaky lately. They conceded 90 points against Richmond in the wet, when earlier on in the season, they were lucky to be conceding 70, St Kilda. So I think Brisbane's forward line can definitely get on top of St Kilda, and I think that Brisbane will win this one. After that, we get to Saturday afternoon, Sydney versus West Coast. Look, Sydney should win this game. They shouldn't have any sort of issues at the SCG against the West Coast Eagles. However, Sydney have not been in very good form. They've been in pretty poor form, in fact. The only game they've played really since Gather Round that they've played well is the game against Carlton, where they just scraped home. Now, yes, they've been in some other games, but I don't think... As a Swan supporter, I've been very disappointed with their year. I will say one thing, that I think maybe last year they kind of jumped the gun that a lot of teams expected, like a lot of people would have expected, including themselves. So I think this year, I wouldn't say it's a write-off, but I would say at this point that they wouldn't be too concerned about the future going on. I do think that Sydney, though, need to recruit some players, because I think it was a huge mistake that they only recruited one player in the trade period last year and the free agency period and picked up Aaron Francis. I think that if a team is not, evolving and moving forward with new recruits, I think they're going backwards, and I think that's what Sydney did on this year. And I think they need to go to the trade period, which they have already said that they're going to be looking for more recruits this year with probably the retirement of Buddy Franklin and get some more salary cap space. But at this stage, I think Sydney are going backwards. But sorry about that. That's not what we're talking about. I'm picking Sydney in this one. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. After that, we get to another 50-50 game in Fremantle versus Essendon. If this was in Melbourne, I'd be picking Essendon every day of the week. But because this is in Perth, Essendon don't have the best record over in Perth. And even though Freo, are pretty good over in Perth, they did not look good against the Giants. I am going to be picking Fremantle, and I'm going to say why. Because they have to respond. That was a terrible game against the Giants. They're always good at home. I do give Essendon a bit of a chance, though. And if Essendon, I think what I mentioned in the video last week about the season predictions, if Essendon can just bank a couple of these 50-50 games, they will make finals this year. If Essendon can win this game, this would be massive for the push towards the end of the season. This would be a massive game for Essendon. But I think Fremantle will just scrape home in this one. After that, we get to Collingwood versus Adelaide on a shocking time slot for this one. Sunday early game. This is a terrible time slot for such a big game for both teams. Adelaide coming off the bye. If this is at Adelaide Oval, I'd be giving Adelaide a real chance here. But at the MCG, I think Collingwood are going to be hard to beat. Both teams coming off the bye, so, they'll both be really fresh, so this will be really good. Both teams probably at their peak, really, at the moment. Collingwood did obviously come off the loss against Melbourne King's birthday, so Collingwood would definitely be wanting to respond, and that's a big reason why I'm going to be tipping Collingwood. I do give the Crows a bit of a chance, though, because I think their forward line could get on top if they do, say pretty solitary and don't let Darcy Moore continue to cut it off and intercept. So I do give the Crows a bit of a chance because their forward line is very dangerous, but I think Collingwood, you have to tip them. At the MCG, basically been the best team in the comp this year. You have to tip Collingwood. In the final game of round 15, we have the Gold Coast versus Hawthorn. big game for the Gold Coast. They definitely have to bounce back after that shocking performance against Carlton. It is at home for them, so that do give them a pretty big chance here. But Hawthorn have been in pretty good form, despite the game against Port Adelaide. They've been in pretty good form, the Hawks. But the reason why I'm going to be going with the Gold Coast Suns is because James Sicily is out, and Hawthorn's defence won't hold up. I think Gold Coast win this one, and I think pretty comfortably.